After a company trip ends in a terrible accident, all the employees lose their lives and find themselves lined up in the afterlife, waiting to be sent to another world. Our main character is Arihito Atobe, an extremely ordinary office worker. Even after dying, he looks strangely calm, perhaps because his life before this was not exactly full of joy. As the line moves forward, Arihito meets a short, blue-haired girl standing at the counter. She calls him by name and hands him a black rectangular object called an exploration card. She tells him that once he arrives, he must go to the guild and choose a job. Before Arihito can even ask enough questions to understand what is happening, a white light envelops him. When he opens his eyes again, he is standing in a medieval European-style town. A voice welcomes him to the Labyrinth Kingdom. It sounds grand, but for someone who has just died, it feels less like a fresh start and more like being transferred to a new branch after leaving his old job behind. Following the girl's instructions, Arihito enters the guild building, where newly reincarnated people complete their registration. At the counter, he notices a brown-haired girl with twin tails and realizes that she was also on the bus involved in the accident. The receptionist congratulates the brown-haired girl for completing her ability assessment and successfully registering as a shrine maiden. Just then, a blonde girl named Alicia appears at the guild, hoping to recruit a Rearguard member. However, everyone around her hesitates because she seems to have a bad reputation related to her teammates. Seeing this, the brown-haired shrine maiden volunteers to join her. Two men standing nearby mock Alicia, saying that no matter how strong she is, forming a party with her will always end the same way because of that. For now, what that means is still unclear. Even Arihito, who overhears the conversation, has no idea what they are talking about. But it is obvious that Alicia is carrying some kind of problem that makes others avoid her. Even so, she does not waste time arguing with the two men. Instead, she happily takes the shrine maiden's hand, invites her to form a party, and leaves with her. After the two girls leave, Arihito steps up to the counter to begin his own registration. The receptionist introduces herself as Louisa Farmel, the person who will help him register as an explorer. She explains that if he does not register, he will not be allowed to enter the labyrinth. When Arihito asks what the Labyrinth Kingdom is, Louisa explains that it is a country where labyrinth explorers and those who support them live. Souls who are reincarnated here begin a new life in this world. Suddenly, Arihito feels a terrible headache, making Louisa worry and consider calling a healer. But Arihito quickly reassures her that he is fine. Louisa then points to the job section on his blank exploration card and tells him to write the occupation that best suits him or the one he wants to pursue. Arihito is surprised that there is no fixed list to choose from, like in a game. Louisa explains that since reincarnated people come from many different backgrounds, allowing them to choose freely helps them make use of their experience from their previous lives. If they choose a job that is in high demand, their new life will start more smoothly. Hearing that, Arihito begins thinking about what he wants most. He does not want to become a hero, and he has no desire to rush into monster hunting. More than anything, he wants a slower and easier life, free from the shadow of his old office job. His memories immediately return to the woman in the orange sweater on the bus, his younger department manager, who once slammed stacks of documents onto his desk and worked him to exhaustion. To Arihito, those days were like a living hell, with endless work draining him day after day. Back in the present, he tells himself that he is now in another world. There is no old company here, no ambitious manager chasing him with deadlines, and finally, he can begin again. But Arihito's life clearly has no intention of letting him relax so easily. Just as he smiles in relief, a familiar female voice calls his name from behind. His expression instantly changes because the person standing in front of him is none other than department manager Kyuka Igarashi, his legendary boss from his previous life. After a few seconds of shock, Arihito realizes that if Kyuka is here, then she must have died and been reincarnated in the Labyrinth Kingdom as well. Kyuka is calmer than he expected. She looks around and says that this place feels like a small cosplay world. She admits that she does not really feel ready to fight monsters, but if that is the duty of reincarnated people, then she will have to adapt. Arihito immediately understands that in this world, jobs and parties are vital for survival. Kyuka asks whether he has chosen his job yet, saying that if possible, she hopes he will choose a role she can rely on. She then reveals that her own job is Valkyrie. Arihito is immediately stunned. He has no desire to be in the same party as his former boss, but he tries to refuse politely without being too direct. Kyuka seems slightly embarrassed and even a little disappointed, but in the end, she agrees to leave and look for another party. As Arihito watches her go, he realizes that she seems different from usual. Perhaps after death and reincarnation, both of them are slowly beginning to step out of the roles they once had. Arihito returns to Louisa's counter to continue the registration. Louisa explains that a person's job has a major effect on contribution points. Actions such as defeating monsters, bringing back treasures, or saving allies will earn explorers points. Those points determine rank, status, housing, and various benefits. When Louisa says that low-ranking people may have to do physically demanding work such as tending horses, Arihito immediately breaks into a cold sweat. His dream of a slow life has barely begun, yet reality is already pulling him back. Wanting to find a role that is in high demand, he asks whether being a rearguard is suitable for a beginner. Louisa confirms that it is, but warns him that compared to frontliners and midliners, rearguards usually have lower physical strength and defense, and their 5-year survival rate is also lower. That sounds worrying, but Arihito still thinks that if the role is in demand, it may be worth trying, so he confidently writes rearguard on his exploration card. In his mind, he probably expects the system to understand and assign him a proper support job, something like a buffer or healer, a role that sounds safe and valuable. But things do not work that conveniently. When Louisa receives the card, she immediately starts sweating, and her smile becomes visibly strained. Arihito asks in confusion what his job actually is. Louisa can only hesitate and say that his job is rearguard, or more accurately, someone who stays in the rear. As it turns out, most people normally write the name of a specific job, such as wizard or swordsman. Arihito, however, wrote a broad position instead, and the system accepted it as a completely new job that had never existed before. Louisa admits that it may be very difficult for him to find a party and apologizes for not guiding him properly. Arihito feels as if lightning has struck him. Just when he wanted an easy life, he has somehow unlocked a difficult route with his own hands. Fortunately, to make up for it, Louisa gives him a mercenary ticket, allowing him to hire a companion and test the power of his strange new job. Outside, Arihito checks his exploration card and sees that his skills include Defense Support Level 1, which can reduce 10 points of damage for an ally in front of him, Attack Support Level 1, Recovery Support Level 1, and another confusing skill called Back from the Front. Since he has no idea whether reducing 10 points of damage is useful in real combat, he decides to test defense support first. Arihito then visits the mercenary introduction station and meets the female manager Layla, who wears an eye patch. When he learns that his ticket can be used to hire a demi-human, he asks for a frontliner who can use a shield. Layla checks and tells him that only one lizardman thief is currently available. She can use multiple types of weapons and carries a small leather shield, making her useful on the first floor of the labyrinth. The word lizardman immediately sends Arihito's imagination in the wrong direction. He pictures a giant muscular lizard monster with a terrifying tongue like something from a nightmare, but the person who actually steps out is the complete opposite, a small girl who looks nothing like what he imagined. Arihito awkwardly greets her, and the small girl only replies with a strange, "Hello." Layla then introduces her as Teresia. What surprises Arihito even more is that Teresia was once human. Layla explains that demi-humans are people who were defeated by monsters inside the labyrinth and transformed. In the Labyrinth Kingdom, the dead cannot be revived. However, if the demi-human state is removed, they can return to their human appearance from before their death. Hearing this immediately changes the atmosphere. Behind Teresia's quiet appearance lies a much heavier past. Layla also explains that the kingdom does not forbid the use of slave marks on demi-humans. Once marked, they can hardly communicate and mostly act according to orders or battle instincts. This other world may look beautiful from the outside, like a fantasy role-playing game, but its rules are far from gentle. However, while Layla is still explaining, Teresia unexpectedly reaches her hand out to Arihito. This small action surprises Layla, because a marked demi-human showing a clear will of her own is far from normal. Arihito takes her hand, and with that, his first party is officially formed. After that, Arihito and Teresia leave the station. By this point, he has equipped a slingshot as his weapon. It makes him look a little more like an explorer, though in a world full of monsters, labyrinths, and combat jobs, starting out with a slingshot still feels rather modest. Even so, Arihito is serious. He feels guilty about letting a small girl like Teresia stand in front and protect him, so he decides that they will find only a weak monster, test his skill, and then retreat. The two arrive at the entrance to the first labyrinth, the Dawn Plain. Before entering, they meet a group of warriors led by an older man named Rival. He recognizes Arihito as Japanese, just like the Valkyrie girl who entered earlier. Arihito immediately guesses that he must be talking about manager Kyuka. Rival explains that his group specializes in rescuing people who get trapped in the labyrinth. He also advises Arihito to stay calm and retreat if he encounters low-level monsters. However, he warns him to be extremely careful of named monsters, because for beginners, encountering one of them is almost certain death. With that warning in mind, Arihito and Teresia enter the green grassland inside the labyrinth. Before long, they encounter their first opponent, a round, fluffy white level 1 monster called a cotton ball. It looks almost like a stuffed animal, but its strength is not as harmless as its appearance suggests. Teresia rushes forward and attacks with her dagger, but the cotton ball is stronger than expected. It rams straight into her and sends her flying. When Arihito sees Teresia's life gauge on his exploration card dropping, he realizes in panic that fighting in the labyrinth is not a game. He immediately orders Teresia to retreat, then quickly activates defense support level 1. When the cotton ball charges again, a pink honeycomb-shaped energy shield appears in front of Teresia and blocks the attack. As the monster is briefly stopped, Arihito fires his slingshot and hits it in the head, creating an opening for Teresia to rush in and finish it with her dagger. After the battle, Arihito regrets not using his skill from the beginning. He quickly checks Teresia's injury, and at that moment, she suddenly speaks. She says that she never truly understood how serious battle and death were until now, but now she does. Her words show that beneath the demi-human form and the restraints of the slave mark, Teresia still has emotions and awareness of her own. Arihito smiles and thanks her for protecting him, then promises that from now on, he will protect her properly as well. It is a simple promise, but to Teresia, it may be the first time someone has not treated her as a rented tool for surviving the labyrinth. However, that peaceful moment does not last long. A loud noise echoes from the distance. Arihito looks down into the lower area and sees manager Kyuka's party in danger. Kyuka is fighting at the front with her spear, but the other members have either fallen or are being overwhelmed. In front of them is a giant red monster with a threatening shape, almost like a flying saucer. One member of the group desperately shouts that it is Red Face, a named monster. Hearing that, Arihito immediately remembers Rival's warning. For beginners, encountering a named monster is almost certain death. And just as Red Face is about to deliver a finishing blow toward Kyuka, Arihito shouts her name in panic. Department head Kyuka is left alone, struggling against Red Face. Her HP bar flickers like a dying flashlight, while her so-called teammate uses a teleport item to flee without hesitation. Since Kyuka was never officially part of their party, she's abandoned like outdated equipment. Despite their unresolved office grudges, Arihito can't just leave her to die. He rushes in shouting for her to run, but Kyuka's pride is just as formidable as her strength. She activates Blink Step and charges forward, determined to finish the monster. Everything goes smoothly, until her stamina drops into the danger zone. At that exact moment, Red Face brings down a thunderous strike, slamming directly into Kyuka and leaving her motionless on the grass. Seeing this, Arihito immediately activates his defensive support skill. A pink, honeycomb-like barrier appears, but it's completely useless, like a decorative billboard, because the skill only works on party members. Just then, Teresia steps forward on her own, positioning herself between Arihito and the monster. In a split second, Arihito recalls something. Defensive support can nullify all damage under 10 points. He orders Teresia to close the distance while pulling out his trusty starting weapon, a slingshot, and fires straight at Red Face's face. At that moment, Teresia's melee attack is enhanced by attack support. A burst of golden light erupts, pinning the monster against a rock wall like a death notice. Moments later, Red Face deflates, transforming into a harmless red ball completely unlike its earlier ferocity. Arihito rushes to Kyuka's side and finds that she's still barely breathing. He tells Teresia to call Rival's rescue team, then quickly checks his Explorer card. It shows he has reached level 2, unlocking the recovery support skill. There's just one problem. He can only use it on someone in his party. Arihito doesn't hesitate. He lifts Kyuka into his arms and sends her a party invitation. Even in her fading consciousness, she manages to accept. The system confirms a 3-member party. Recovery support activates immediately, pulling Kyuka back from the brink of death. Shortly after, Rival's rescue team arrives and takes her away for treatment, leaving Arihito and Teresia standing beside Red Face's remains. Right then, Alicia and Suzuna happen to pass by. Alicia stares at the monster's corpse in shock upon learning it was defeated by a team consisting of nothing more than a backliner with a slingshot and a tiny demi-human. She reveals that even a level 3 party might struggle to take down such a creature. What she doesn't realize is that Arihito had quietly executed a perfectly timed series of buffs. Remembering that Alicia is desperately searching for a capable backliner, Arihito decides to keep his true role a secret, for now. Arihito and Teresia leave the dungeon and return to town, stopping by the blacksmith shop. The blonde, center-parted blacksmith looks surprised. They've barely been gone half a day, yet they're already back. Arihito asks Teresia to hand over her weapons for maintenance, but instead of giving them to the blacksmith, the little demi-human places both her dagger and shield into Arihito's hands, then gently rests her hand against his chest. The shop owner chuckles softly, remarking that the girl seems especially fond of him. Arihito is left awkward and flustered, unsure whether this is a blessing or trouble waiting to happen. Still, one thing is certain. The first real bonds within his backline party have begun to form. After their dramatic victory over Red Face, Arihito doesn't celebrate. Instead, his mind jumps straight to something more important: how to keep Teresia by his side permanently. He asks the blonde blacksmith how to turn a hired mercenary into a full-fledged party member. The answer is simple, but daunting. He needs to accumulate 100 bronze tickets to buy out a mercenary's contract. Hearing that number, Arihito can't help but think he'd need to clear dozens of dungeons to reach it. Even so, after just one battle alongside Teresia, he already knows she's an irreplaceable asset. With a mix of excitement and anxiety, Arihito heads to the guild to report his results to Luisa. The receptionist is stunned the moment she checks the board. The bounty for eliminating a wanted target is 20 gold coins, with a contribution score of 280. Back in her adventuring days, her personal record was only 105, and it took defeating 50 fluffballs just to reach level 2. For a moment, she almost feels like quitting her job to follow him, convinced she's just witnessed a system-breaking anomaly. But what shocks her the most is Arihito's trust stat, sitting at 50. Normally, fighting alongside demi-humans doesn't increase this value at all. Quietly, Louisa begins to suspect that his backliner class might be the strongest in the world. Arihito quickly asks her to keep it a secret. He'd rather not have the entire guild's HR department breathing down his neck. Thanks to this incredible leap, his ranking skyrockets to 137,529 across the kingdom and 1,124 within District 8. The numbers sound impressive, but to him, they're still abstract. What he does understand is this. With that rank, the guild will sponsor him a suite room at an inn in District 8, a far cry from the cramped office apartment of his past life. After finishing his report, Arihito visits Kyuka in the infirmary. She's already awake, carrying the same commanding presence as before, despite having nearly lost half her HP to a monster. Kyuka thanks him, then frankly predicts that high-level parties will soon be fighting over a backliner capable of taking down a named monster in a single outing. At the same time, she can't help but blame herself. She chose the flashy Valkyrie class, yet her contribution score sits at 0, a bitter contrast to her former subordinate. Arihito doesn't let her sink into self-doubt. He tells her that her refusal to run from Redface inspired him to act. It sounds like a modest compliment, but it catches Kyuka completely off guard. Then, without hesitation, Arihito formally invites her to join his party, promising to support her however he can, something he never would have imagined in his previous life when she used to push him to his limits with relentless deadlines. Kyuka happily accepts, but with one condition. From now on, he has to call her Big Sis Kyuka instead of Department Head. Even though the thought of addressing the woman who used to slam documents onto his desk so casually makes him nervous, Arihito agrees. And just like that, their relationship begins to change. Kyuka agrees to move into Arihito's suite so they can coordinate more easily, or at the very least, so he doesn't have to carry her back and forth from the infirmary every day. On the way, they stop by a clothing shop. Watching Kyuka try on casual outfits instead of her usual office suit, Arihito can't hide his surprise. It feels like he's seeing a completely different version of his former boss. He realizes something. Back then, they had never interacted outside of work. Kyuka begins to open up about her past. She grew up in a strict household with curfews and even a business-arranged marriage set up by her father. To escape that cage, she threw herself into work, pushing herself until she became the most intimidating boss in the office. Now she quietly apologizes for the unreasonable demands she used to make. Arihito simply nods. Behind those stacks of documents slammed onto his desk was just a girl trying to run from her own life. Later, the two share a meal at a tavern, raising their glasses as they put their old boss-employee dynamic behind them and officially become comrades. While enjoying their meal, Arihito overhears a group of adventurers talking about Alicia, known as the Death Sword, who is currently in District 8. According to them, Alicia has left the White Knight Brigade and is trying to recruit and train Suzuna, but their intentions don't sound good. They're planning to take advantage of the situation, exploiting the fact that Alicia is burdened with a rookie. Arihito frowns at what he hears but doesn't have time to think it through. Back at the suite, Kyuka starts feeling a bit awkward about sharing a room with a man. The next morning, the team receives their newly forged equipment, crafted from red face materials. Teresia gets a red buckler that reduces fire damage. Kyuka receives a scarf with similar resistance. As for Arihito, he gets a slingshot that fires flaming shots. It still looks like a toy, but at least now it can actually burn things. With their 3-member party fully formed, they easily clear out monsters on floor 1. However, Arihito knows that if he wants to gather 100 bronze tickets to secure Teresia permanently, they'll need to move on to floor 2. The Explorer card warns that this area contains a dangerous named monster, the Fang Orc, also known as the Juggernaut, powerful enough to wipe out even level 3 or 4 parties. Arihito honestly thinks they're not ready and considers turning back. But then, he hears Alicia's scream echoing from beyond the gate. His instincts kick in immediately. Without hesitation, he leads the team into floor 2 to rescue them. Inside, Alicia and Suzuna are struggling against the Fang Orc and a massive swarm of poisonous bees. Arihito doesn't waste a second. He directs Kyuka and Teresia to draw the bees' attention, then activates defensive support just in time to save Suzuna from a potentially fatal sting. Overwhelmed, Suzuna breaks down in tears, blaming herself for being a burden. But Arihito doesn't let her spiral. He quickly identifies the real problem. Alicia had deliberately disbanded her party, pulling all the monsters onto herself so Suzuna could land the finishing blows and level up faster. But she overlooked one critical detail. Poisonous bees always prioritize attacking backliners, exactly where Suzuna was standing. The result is Suzuna nearly died because of what was meant to be a selfless strategy, but in reality it was reckless and dangerously flawed. Exposed, Alicia loses her composure. She raises her voice, admitting that she needs to make Suzuna stronger, fast, so she can return. At that moment, Arihito connects the dots with what he heard at the tavern the night before. There's only one place she wants to return to: the White Knight Brigade. The question hangs in the air, heavy and unspoken. Everything seems to freeze. Alicia falls silent, her expression shifting from anger to uncertainty and unease. Alicia immediately rejects Arihito's accusation. The person she and Suzuna are desperate to return to is Misaki, their missing friend who holds the gambler class and has disappeared somewhere on the second floor. Earlier, Misaki picked up a treasure chest dropped by a monster. The moment she opened it, a teleportation trap activated and sent her to another location within the same floor. Because Alicia understands how these traps work, she knows Misaki has not been transported outside the Dawn Plains. However, ever since the search began, she has felt that someone has been secretly following them. The sight of Misaki lying unconscious beside three unfamiliar men makes it even clearer that her disappearance may not have been a simple accident. Kyuka suggests splitting up to cover more ground, but Arihito refuses immediately. If a smaller group encounters an entire pack of monsters, they may not have enough strength to survive. Depending on an unfamiliar party is equally dangerous, while the identity of their stalker remains unknown. Arihito therefore chooses to combine their forces. Alicia and Suzuna will temporarily travel with his group until Misaki is found. Suzuna officially joins the party, allowing her to receive the Rearguard's defensive and enhancement effects. Alicia agrees to accompany them, but remains outside the official formation. Her level is so high that joining would drastically reduce the experience gained by everyone else. The arrangement allows Suzuna to remain protected and continue leveling, although it also means Arihito cannot apply any support skills directly to Alicia. Before they leave, Arihito presses Alicia about the mysterious limitation that prevents her from remaining in the front line of a party for long periods. She refuses to give him a clear explanation and offers only a cold warning. If she ever tells them to run, they must abandon her immediately. Arihito gives Suzuna a return scroll as an emergency escape route. Alicia shakes his hand, agrees to follow his commands, and promises to hand over every item collected during the mission. Suzuna nervously introduces herself properly to Kyuka and Teresia. The plan has barely been finalized when a scream tears through the area. Kyuka recognizes Misaki's voice immediately. The group rushes toward the sound and discovers a deeply suspicious scene. Misaki is being held near a pack of orcs while a juggernaut stands farther ahead. A named monster of that level should never appear in this part of the second floor. Its presence proves that someone deliberately brought the creature here to create a trap. Alicia understands the plan immediately. Their hidden enemy intends to use her strength to kill the juggernaut, then steal whatever treasure it drops. Knowing it is a trap does nothing to change the fact that Misaki is still in danger. Alicia orders everyone to remain behind and charges into the orc pack alone with Sonic Raid, immediately following it with Blade Rondo. Her great sword sweeps across the battlefield, cutting down one orc after another and opening a direct path toward Misaki. However, the moment orc blood splashes across Alicia, her adventurer card displays a warning. Her unique berserk skill has activated. Red energy rapidly surrounds her body, and the calm focus in her eyes begins to disappear. Her strength and speed rise dramatically, but her movements also become increasingly difficult to control. Arihito finally understands why Alicia always keeps her distance from permanent companions. She has no idea what she might do once Berserk takes over, so she chooses to fight alone rather than risk dragging an ally into danger. Alicia insists that she is still in control and charges directly at the Juggernaut. The monster answers with brutal voice, releasing a roar powerful enough to create a violent shockwave that prevents everyone behind her from approaching. The moment Alicia enters its reach, one enormous hand seizes her and pins her against the creature's chest. She struggles desperately but cannot break free. Even while losing strength, she screams for Arihito to take everyone and run. Arihito refuses to leave her behind. He fires Blaze Shot directly into the Juggernaut's eye. The attack cannot pierce its defense, but it forces the creature to hesitate, buying him several precious seconds to study the situation. Arihito orders Kyuka, Teresia, and Suzuna to keep their return scrolls ready. If his plan fails, they must escape immediately. A single direct strike from the Juggernaut could kill inexperienced explorers like them. Kyuka refuses to abandon Arihito, while Suzuna insists that no matter how hopeless the situation becomes, she will continue fighting beside the others. Arihito accepts their resolve but makes them promise to retreat if necessary. He has no certainty that they can win. What he does know is that Alicia remains fast enough to avoid attacks and create counterattack opportunities. More importantly, the number of strikes contained within her sword techniques may be the key to breaking through the Juggernaut's defense. Ordinary physical attacks can barely damage its body, but Arihito's attack support does more than increase the power of one action. It adds extra damage to every successful hit. If Alicia uses a skill containing dozens of slashes, the support damage will be applied dozens of times as well. To receive that effect, however, she must officially become a member of his party. Arihito sends the invitation in the middle of the battle without hesitation. Kyuka shouts that Alicia has no right to die alone in a place like this, while Suzuna begs her to trust Arihito. Their voices pull Alicia's attention back from the edge of Berserk. She accepts the invitation, allowing someone else to place her within a formation and support her directly for the first time. Following Arihito's command, Alicia activates Sonic Raid and immediately chains it into Blossom Blade. Her body becomes a streak of red light circling the Juggernaut at tremendous speed. None of the individual strikes is powerful enough to penetrate penetrate its defense, but every slash receives additional damage from the rearguard. The rapid multi-hit technique becomes the perfect counter-attack. Countless flashes cut through the giant body. The Juggernaut attempts to raise one arm, loses its balance, and crashes into the ground beneath a cloud of dust. Even after the monster falls, Arihito remains alert. The people who brought it here are still hiding nearby. Just as he expects, a man standing on a cliff raises a crossbow and aims directly at him, claiming Arihito should have pretended not to notice anything if he wanted to survive. Kyuka reacts first, using Thunderbolt to disrupt the shot. Suzuna fires several precise arrows around the attacker, restricting his movement, while Tarisha closes the distance and takes control of the situation. Once every threat has been neutralized, Alicia can barely remain standing. Arihito tells her to stop forcing herself and activates recovery support, gradually restoring her stamina. Alicia lowers her head and apologizes for charging ahead alone. She admits that her behavior may be difficult to understand and promises that she will properly explain Berserk to everyone later. Nearby, Kyuka and Suzuna are tending to Misaki. The moment she regains consciousness, Misaki asks whether Suzuna was rescued. After learning that everyone is safe, she tightly embraces her friend. Suzuna can finally breathe again. Arihito's group did not merely protect her during the battle. She also played a direct role in saving the person she had been searching for. A black treasure chest decorated with red patterns appears beside the Juggernaut's remains. Alicia explains that it is an exceptionally rare drop found only after defeating certain named monsters. However, no one should open it carelessly because it may contain another trap. Misaki's teleportation incident is still fresh in everyone's mind, so they decide to bring the chest back to the guild and have a professional disarm it first. Misaki once believed there was little value in cooperating with others while exploring a labyrinth. After being rescued by the entire group, she admits that she was wrong and wants to change her attitude. She then immediately suggests that Arihito pay for everyone's dinner once the report is finished. Kyuka notices that Tarisha also wants to join them. Misaki walks over, gently touches the girl's lizard-shaped helmet, and declares that it is both soft and adorable. Back at the guild, Arihito and Tarisha report everything to Louisa. The moment she hears the name Juggernaut, she immediately moves the conversation into a private room. Louisa explains that named monsters are divided into those that appear with some regularity and those that are extraordinarily rare. The Juggernaut belongs to the second category. In the past, a party of 24 explorers attempted to fight one and was completely destroyed. Several survivors later became members of Bergen's faction. With that information, Arihito pieces together the entire plot. Bergen already knew how powerful the Juggernaut was because he had survived a previous encounter. His group kidnapped Misaki and used her as bait, lured Alicia into a prepared location, then planned to wait until she defeated the monster before stealing the black treasure chest. Louisa agrees that the theory is highly likely and tells Arihito to leave the rest to the guild. Kidnapping someone, deliberately drawing monsters toward other explorers, and launching an armed attack have gone far beyond an ordinary personal dispute. During the conversation, Arihito also learns that the Labyrinth Kingdom currently has no king ruling it directly. The royal family was driven out of the first district long ago, leaving real authority in the hands of the Grand Temple's director and the leaders of the various guilds. The labyrinths explored by adventurers are not physically located behind the kingdom's walls either. They exist in many different places across the world, while the gates concentrated within the kingdom merely function as teleportation entrances. When Louisa begins calculating the group's achievements, she becomes increasingly unable to hide her shock. Entering the second floor grants 10 points. Arihito has reached level 3, while Kyuka and Suzuna have also gained levels. 15 cotton balls, 8 poison bees, and 23 fang orcs contribute hundreds of additional points. Defeating the wanted target Juggernaut alone awards 800. The list continues with increases in trust from Tarisha, Kyuka, Suzuna, and Alicia. Points for rescuing another party, saving Misaki, defeating 3 criminals, and recovering the black treasure chest. Arihito's total contribution reaches 1,649, raising him to second place in the 8th district after only 2 days of activity. Louisa nearly collapses at the sight of a rookie earning a 4-digit score, since even 3 digits from one expedition are considered rare. Arihito can only thank her awkwardly. At that moment, Misaki enters and tells everyone to hurry up because dinner is waiting. Arihito invites Louisa to join them as thanks for all the support she has provided since the day he registered his profession. At the inn, Kyuka insists that Arihito sit in the center because he is the party leader, then suggests that Louisa take the seat beside him. Louisa politely offers the place to someone who actually participated in the battle. Arihito begins mentioning Suzuna and Tarisha, but Misaki immediately volunteers herself. She thanks him for rescuing her, boasts about her ability to pour drinks, and teases Kyuka for being jealous of her youth. Misaki then asks whether Arihito prefers quiet girls like Suzuna or women who are a little older. Suzuna hurriedly interrupts before the celebration turns into a public investigation of their leader's personal preferences. After such an intense battle, the argument over seats and the playful teasing finally allow everyone to relax. 7 people who were complete strangers only a short time ago can now sit together around one table. However, even after the food arrives, Arihito continues holding his cup without raising it. He is not allowed the toast to begin because there is still one important announcement he needs to make. After dinner, Arihito intends to meet Layla and requests that Teresia become an official member of his party. He no longer wants her treated as a temporary mercenary who could be returned to the center at any moment. His goal is also much greater than simply keeping a strong fighter beside him. Arihito wants to discover a way to remove Teresia's demi-human condition and restore her original human form. Teresia silently stares at him. Since the moment they met, she has been a branded mercenary unable to communicate freely and frequently treated as nothing more than a combat tool. Arihito held her hand, protected her inside the labyrinth, respected her choices, and now openly accepts responsibility for her future. The greatest victory of the day is therefore not defeating the Juggernaut, obtaining the Black Treasure Chest, or reaching second place in the district. It is the fact that Teresia finally has a party determined to keep her beside them, and a path that may one day allow her to become human again.